I knew that Elsie Taylor had been entangled with her childhood friend for over a decade, but I still plunged headfirst into the relationship. On the day of our engagement, Elsie received a call that her childhood friend had fainted in the hospital, and she left me abruptly to go to him. My grandmother, witnessing this, hurried after her, but was tragically hit by a car and did not survive the hospital's efforts to save her. At that moment, I gave up on her completely, realizing that if it wasn't meant to be mine, I shouldn't force it. Elsie was my superior, and in truth, we were from two different worlds. It was only because her childhood friend, involved in a car accident, needed a blood transfusion, and I happened to be a match, so I caught the eye of her. After I saved Jeremiah Moore, Elsie looked at me tenderly for the first time, smiled, and asked if I had any wishes. Dizzy from the blood donation, I blurted out my true feelings. I wanted to date her. Elsie paused for a few seconds before agreeing, and we dated for 3 years. This year, pressured by the Taylor family to get married, Elsie agreed to an engagement to avoid their lectures. I knew it was merely for show. I didn't expect Jeremiah to faint at such a critical moment. I pleaded with Elsie, "Don't go. The hospital has doctors. What am I supposed to do if you miss our engagement party? Alger Phillips, don't be so selfish. Being engaged to me is already a blessing for you. Don't ask for more." She snapped and ran off, with my grandmother following quickly after her. "Elsie, please, finish the ceremony before you go." I was stunned, but a second later, I heard screams from outside. "Someone's been hit." When I rushed out, Elsie's car was already far away, and my grandmother lay in a pool of blood, surrounded by people. At that moment, I broke down, unable to hear anything else, seeing only my motionless grandmother until the ambulance arrived, and I was pushed into it. We did our best, but the patient couldn't make it. The doctor's words echoed in my ears as I sat in the hallway, holding the death certificate, completely dazed. It wasn't until a harsh ringtone brought me back to reality. It was Elsie, demanding harshly, "Alger, where are you? Come to the hospital now. Jeremiah needs your blood." Infuriated, I refused outright. "To hell with him. Elsie, I'm done with you. Don't bother me again." There was a pause on the other end, then a cold voice responded, "Alger, you got a lot of nerve. It's just an engagement, and Jeremiah is dying. Then let him die. He's always sick, a waste of food alive. He should have died a long time ago." I hung up and went straight to the police station. My grandmother had been hit, and while the driver's family contacted me for forgiveness, I refused. The real culprits were Elsie and Jeremiah, this mad couple. I had been foolish to entangle myself with her, knowing her long-standing relationship with Jeremiah. Now, I was paying the price. "Grandma, I'm so sorry," I lamented as I stood in a daze, only to see Elsie approaching with her bodyguards. "Alger Phillips, stop him." I turned and ran, calling the police as I did. No matter how rich she was, Elsie couldn't override the law. I refused to donate blood. There were other rare blood types like mine in the world. I wanted to see if, without me, her childhood friend could really survive. But before I could leave the hospital, I was tackled to the ground. Her bodyguards caught up and pinned me down. "Where do you think you're going? Being able to donate blood to Mr. Moore is an honor, and you're ungrateful." Struggling in vain, I shouted, "I don't want to, and you can't for me to do that. Let go of me. Elsie, you're breaking the law." Elsie Taylor came from the back and came up to me on her heels. "Alger Phillips, what are you making a scene about? It's not the first time. What's the fuss?" She waved her hand and the bodyguard took me to the hospital room, where I was held down and unable to move as I watched the bright red blood being pumped out. Next door in the hospital bed, Jeremiah Moore looked at me pale. "I'm so sorry to trouble you again." I bit my lip tightly while twisting my head around. "This is the last time, and I'm not going to let you get away with it again. Elsie Taylor, we're done." Elsie Taylor was not pleased. "What are you making a scene about? Saving a man's life is better than building a 7-story pagoda." "I won't treat you badly if you save him," I snorted. "Treat you poorly? Elsie Taylor, what do you think you are? High and mighty? I told you, I'm done with you, and don't come back to me ever again." I took a deep breath and just felt my heart ache to the core. Grandma's aftermath was not yet taken care of. I really regret it and don't want to cross paths with her again in my life. By the time the transfusion was over, my head was dizzy, and I was just about to close my eyes when footsteps came from outside. "Who called the police?" I immediately raised my voice and said, "It's me." Elsie Taylor looked incredulous. "Alger Phillips, I can't believe you actually called the police." And I slowly got up and looked at the police. "They forced me to have a blood transfusion, and these doctors didn't have my consent to privately pretend to sign for me. I demand that they be held accountable." Grandma is gone and still lying in the morgue. All these people are accomplices, and I won't spare any of them. Elsie Taylor blushed hard at once. "It's just that rich people have all the means in the world, but she was out in an hour." It was just still a hard look on his face. "She was warned in there and signed an agreement and wrote me an apology." I hold it in my hand. "It's kind of my life preserver. If she dares to come again, I don't mind making her an internet sensation." Out of the police station, Elsie Taylor, her face blue, looked at me hard and said, "Alger Phillips, you've grown." I wasn't impressed. "Elsie Taylor, let me remind you, you just have a little money. This is just a lesson for next time." "No, there is no next time between me and you," Elsie Taylor bellowed. "Alger Phillips, don't you regret it? Are you kidding me? Can I regret it? Meeting Elsie Taylor is the biggest regret of my life. If I could turn back time, I would never have anything to do with her again." Back at the hospital, the medical staff who had forced me to have a blood transfusion were all dealt with, and the director apologized apologized to me, begging for forgiveness, but I didn't say anything. I just took away all the records of my transfusions in the past few years. Also, I read that Jeremiah Moore's blood type is indeed rare. It's just that his medical report was far healthier than I would have liked. I filmed it while they weren't looking, and then went and took care of my grandmother's affairs, and I buried her ashes in a suburban cemetery. I'll go back when it's all done. I have my own rental house in City A. I was packing up my clothes and moving in because I was engaged, and now that things are quiet, I'm trying to get back to my normal life. I had just finished taking care of everything, and I laid down when I saw dozens of texts on my phone, all from Elsie Taylor. Alger Phillips, are you for real? Come back at once and I'll forgive you. What are you pretending? You don't just want to see me bow down. I've apologized. What more do you want? It's just a few tubes of blood. What are you counting?